Welcome to Sales is Not a Dirty Word, the show that proves if it's a fit, it's a fact. I'm your host, innovative sales coach, Aleasha Bahr, and the creator of the Black Sheep Sales Method. If you're a done-for-you service provider who wants to increase their profits and impact without pressure, pitching, or pretending to be someone else, then this is for you. And today's episode is a little different. We're going to talk about cold pitching, which is not something that I usually talk about, because there are so few people who do it well. You really want to try to stand out, and most people are just screaming at everyone like in a crowded place with no intention or care for if they're the right audience or like how to, tailor it to the person they're talking to. And it's just useless and it feels desperate and it doesn't have a very high conversion rate. So I was cold pitched recently in a way that was really pretty effective. It got my attention, and I usually am not responding to stuff like that. So I wanted to break down why it was well done, and it's actually what you would do in a sales conversation as well. Obviously, it's just a little harder with a cold pitch because, you have an even smaller attention span from somebody. So this was for my podcast. I get people reaching out all the time trying to be a guest on my podcast, or agencies reaching out and trying to get somebody to be a guest on my podcast. And I'm super intentional about who I bring on the show because I want it to be actually impactful content for you guys. I have my solo episodes that are just sales related, my methodology, like this one. And then I interview people. And people always think that I want to interview sales experts, but I don't, because I have episodes on my sales methodology. And when I've brought sales experts on before, I didn't agree with what they were saying because I am such a black sheep in sales. So I don't really want to, if somebody is aligned with me, I have brought on a couple people who are aligned with me, which I love jamming with those people. But generally speaking, we're the outliers, right? So, I only focus on people who can bring something impactful to my listeners, to you guys. If they're like mindset, personal development, general life, business of some kind, which could be operations, it could be branding, it could be leads, all these kind of ancillary things, right? So anyway, usually people just reach out and say like, oh, here's this sales expert and here's all the sales topics they can talk about. And I'm like, I don't care. It's like this long bio that is nothing to do with me in the show. So one of the biggest foundations for sales is to make it about the other person, not yourself. And this is something that people get wrong a lot. They do it a lot on their website too. We call it, don't wee on your website. Like, we do this, we do that, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's all about us, and these are our credentials, and these are our projects. And you think that that's what people don't want to hear, but they don't. They want to hear what you can do for them and why they care. Why does that experience matter to them? Because you can get them XYZ end result, right? It's always about connecting it to the end result. And so this guy reaches out, and at first glance, I was like, whatever, he's probably just pitching me some salespeople, right? But then he followed up, y'all, and he said, hi, I just wanted to say that I truly admire you. He started off by complimenting, which a lot of people have some like stupid pleasantry there. The first line is the most important line of an email. It's the most attention that you'll ever have. And so people will be like, I hope you're having a great day or something, which is actually a really great closing sentence, not an opening sentence. So anyway, he starts off with a compliment, which I always say to do if you're having any kind of cold situation. Acknowledge what somebody's doing right, because another common mistake is people will just talk about what you're doing wrong. And nobody's very receptive after you sit there and say, hey, all this stuff's wrong. I know how to do it right. Work with me. Right? They say that in email and they say that in a sales conversation, and it's total turnoff. So he starts off by saying something really nice, like, I wanted to say that I truly admire you. I know that producing a top-rated podcast is hard work. I've been hosting mine for almost 4 years, and selecting the right guests is super important. That's why I turn down most guest pitches. I want to be able to serve you guests that make you jump with excitement, like when my daughter got her first Hello Kitty makeup set. So help me help you and let me know who your ideal guest would be. Thanks for the inspiration and keep up the great work. With love and admiration. So he's a podcast guesting agency, right? So he basically has so much empathy here. He's like, I know that most pitches suck, okay? And I'm guessing that you didn't answer because you didn't like the people I sent you, which, yeah, that's a real possibility. And follows up with, how can I make this specific to you? What would make you want to like say, hey, oh, I'm so glad you sent me these guests, right? Which is all any buyer wants, is somebody to make it custom to them, right? And why they care and why it's in their benefit. So anyway, I'm like, oh, well, let me go back and look at who he pitched, right? Because I bet they're sales experts, right? They're not. They're not sales experts, you guys. One is a leadership expert and the other one is an operations expert. So this guy actually had listened to my podcast, which researching any prospect before you reach out to them, when you are being intentional and targeted, you know how I always say, like, sales isn't a numbers game unless you treat people like numbers. And this is a great example of when you're intentional and targeted and do research in this way, you're going to have way higher success. And I don't feel like just a number. So when you research and you know stuff about somebody, yes, you can't do that on a scale level. If you're trying to, hit volume, then don't worry about it. But most people just need 25 clients or less a year to be happy. And if that's the case, then you really don't need like this mass volume, and it will hurt your reputation if you do that, because people are like, oh, this person is just always trying to sell stuff. They're not even thinking about me. They don't care, right? They're just pitching the world. And it's not a good look. And so anyway, this is a great example. The man did his research and noticed that I didn't interview sales experts, that I have my own solo sales episodes. So anyway, then in his pitch, he covered their expertise in a story format. And this is something else that I always talk about, right? That storytelling is the best way to communicate in a conversation something that you want the other person to remember, because since the beginning of time, humans have learned and retained information like history, for example, through stories. It's just, you're going to remember them better than a list of facts, right? So usually when I get these cold pitches, it's just somebody's credentials, and not really like a story about their life, kind of. So like, for example, this guy, he's like, from an early age, this guy understood investing in people leads to inevitable profits. His father modeled this ethos when he took personal responsibility for an employee grappling with drug addiction. So there's like a little storyline there that he's dropping in like subtly that could be a potential storyline for the podcast. Paying for the employee's rehab and welcoming back to work once sober, his father's actions deeply impacted him, instilling a lifelong conviction about the inherent value of people over profits. I'm guessing that he got like incredible results with this employee, and it's like when you invest in people, you perform, right? So it's also his leadership and operations stuff. And then there's like what topics he has, right? So he makes and then he has the bio and says that they will promote it to their audience. So you'll pick up some more email and podcast subscribers and eventually clients too. So, like, not only did he do this stuff in storytelling format, he also said the thing that I care about most that no one ever cares about, which is growing my audience. So if you're going to pitch to be on somebody's show, you want to discuss how you're going to offer value to their audience. Sometimes you don't know who the audience is. He could have probably guessed. It wasn't tailored to my audience. But I do, care the most about it getting to a wider audience, so more people can hear this message, and I can impact more people, right? So whenever I reach out to be on somebody's podcast, I'm definitely talking about it, promoting it, right? Like, I'm happy to post it to my audience. This is how big it is, blah, 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 right? And he's doing the same. And not only that, he's talking about the end result of promoting it, so you can grow your audience and possibly pick up more clients. You guys have the same kind of clients. You have the same kind of audience. So he's connecting the dot for me. Like, a lot of people just assume, oh, if I say that I'm going to promote your podcast, like, why you would want that. But when you connect that dot, it's less heavy lifting mentally for the other person. And so it's a lot easier for them to grasp what you're saying and want it and say yes. And this is something that is definitely important in your sales conversation too. When I first work with people, they're not connecting the result at all to whatever their thing is. They're focusing way too much on deliverables, right? Instead of the result of the deliverables. So anyway, yeah, he was asking in his follow-up, I didn't say anything, but I was like so surprised, right? That he actually did care. And this is why cold pitching is harder, because people's attention spans are so much shorter, right? So I just didn't even pay attention. But because of his follow-up, I went back and looked and said, hey, actually, both of these people will probably be a good fit. And he was simply asking a question like, what do you need in a guest? So that he could personalize and position whatever his quote unquote pitch was to me, which is what you need to do in a sales conversation. Like the last solo episode I did was all about customizing your sales conversation. And the only way you can is if you have important information about the other person and what's motivating them, right? So instead of guessing and just throwing stuff out there that you think is cool, you can just ask. And so many people don't do that. They just keep guessing and throwing stuff out there and not nailing it, right? So it's something that's really important in the active sales conversation, but definitely in a pitch too, because it's saying, I care. There is a way to make this a win-win, right? Like this could be good for you. This could be good for me. We could all be happy. Just let me know what you need. So yeah, he got the information he needed to make his quote unquote sale, so to speak, not in a pushy way, but a genuine, let me add value to you kind of way. And that's the best way to do follow-up, is to offer value. So a lot of times people are saying like, oh, let me circle back, let me check in, let me touch base, let me follow up. And are you going to, basically they're saying, are you going to buy my thing? Let me know if you have any questions. And that just means, are you going to buy my thing? And it's very self-serving. So nobody wants to respond to it. Think about when you get that email. Do you want to respond to that email? No, you don't. So, there are a lot of ways that you can add value to somebody. You can do that with articles. You can do that with stories or examples or ideas. That's something that I work with people on. When I work with them, I create sales emails. I'll help craft a cold pitch. Especially keeping in mind, you don't know how many pitches someone's heard. So when you follow up in a way that gives them the benefit of the doubt and empathy, they will just be stunned by the pattern interrupt. And so this is something that's woven into your entire sales process from beginning to end. And it's going to make it so much more effective. And it's going to feel so much more aligned and in integrity to you. So it's the type of stuff I help clients with all the time. And these skills like storytelling, empathy, asking questions that give you the info you need to get someone to move forward, and always connecting to the end result. These are all skills I show you how to master so that they're not something you have to think about, because if you're thinking about it, it's not going to be as effective. They just become a reflex, a natural instinct. It's kind of like reconnecting with your natural human intuition the way you would in any normal conversation. And the only reason people act differently is because there's an exchange of money at the end of a sales conversation, but it doesn't have to be, right? It can just be the same. It should be the same for it to be effective. So anyway, I have had 3 people in the last 48 hours mention that they increased, doubled, and one said tripled their sales just by listening to this podcast, which I love to hear. That's like the only thing I want to hear, really. And I want to mention that if this information is resonating with you too, what would it be worth if it was specific to you? What would be predictively possible every month if it was designed around your business, personality, audience, and service? If it feels like that would be valuable, then please book a sales level up call, and the link is in the bio. That is the end of another episode of Sales is Not a Dirty Word. I hope that you guys feel like you got action you can implement immediately and see a difference. And join us again next time to learn how you can convert up to 80% of your leads without pressure pitching or pretending to be someone else. Thanks for listening.